Excuse me.
I have something for you. For me.
Throw this down for a catch.
I don't have a quarrel with you, teacher. We've been doing this all night. Nothing. All right.
I just watched the pilot of a new television series that evidently is coming called The Chosen. The pilot is called The Shepherd, and it is probably the most profound biblical epic I've ever seen. Not because it was larger than life, it isn't, but because it tells the story of Jesus in artistically meaningful ways, one of which is through the use of backstory.
Fruit here is incredible. Everything that grows here is immaculate. Except for the people. You're such a miserable lot. You worship one God, and yet you're all divided.
Only one language keeps their peace. None speak it.
You are the great Nicodemus.
I serve only God.
Yes. Yes, so do your enemies, rogue preachers in the wilderness, raving about a coming Messiah.
Simon, you're scared. I've lost everything. Burnt every bridge. If I don't catch a ton of fish or get some help somehow, they'll arrest me. I'm trapped.
No more talking, Simon. Maybe God can get your attention now.
Who are you? Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. I saw him. It was incredible.
You have experienced a miracle. You are healed.
What do you want from me?
Follow me.
He performs miracles and seeks no credit. Who did this?
I don't know his name. His time for men to know has not yet come.
Although I didn't know what to call it when I was younger, the movie I fell in love with on the story of Jesus is Jesus of Nazareth. I never much liked any of the movies of Jesus and still don't like most of them. In many of them, they're not much different than the really oldest one, I think The Greatest King That Ever Lived or something, where Jesus is just really a stick figure walking around making statements and doing miracles. There is no life in them because there's no context given. There's no personalities of the disciples, for example. We know nothing of the backstory of the individuals who lived with and surrounded Jesus' mission and ministry. We don't know the backstory of his enemies. Therefore, his words echo in a way that really just flattens out and lies flat. One of the most significant things that I think Jesus ever said was when he said to the disciples on the night of his betrayal and soon death, in the upper room, when he turned that incredible ancient tradition of Passover meal into the Eucharist of the church, into a kind of Jewish wedding ceremony, really, where we lift the cup and accept his incredible offer of himself. In any event, the most powerful statement inside that is when he says to them, about that ritual, about what should be a living sign in us. Do this in remembrance of me, in memory of me. Memory is a powerful gift. Now, the word makes perfect sense to the disciples because they will have a vivid memory of Jesus. It flows off of us as simply a statement from another time and place that we are repeating. But that's not what the Gospels meant when they said, do this in remembrance of me. John gives us a hint of it in 1 John 1 through 5, where I don't have the words in front of me, but basically he says, we have touched, tasted, i.e. slept with, walked with, heard with our own ears, experienced what we've seen with our own eyes. We've tasted the food he has tasted. And then he says an extraordinary thing. He says, and you, through us and with us, have come to know him. That's closer to the idea given when Jesus says, do this in memory of me. C.S. Lewis was the first one who turned me on to an ancient understanding of the inner witnesses, or the inner senses, not just simply the senses of the physical body, which are powerful, of course, taste, touch, smell, sight, and the other one. But he talks about the inward wits or senses. Those include memory, which is the reliving or reenactment, the tasting of an experience we've had in the past that becomes incredibly precious and real to us, but in a new context. Therefore, it's not exactly the same. It takes on a new meaning because now it's mixed with the new context. But it captures the smells and sights and sounds of the outer senses. Memory is such a powerful thing. Talks about the others, which includes the ability of common sense or community awareness, or that sense that we get, that wisdom that we get from the learned experience of our culture and time. Not just ours, but the culture itself. And then there is that sense of estimation, which is like imagination, except that it really is based on experience. So we are taking from our experience, and we are, if you will, mathematically almost projecting into the future a possibility based on what we've already known. So this gift of estimation. And then there is the gift of imagination, which is to imagine that which we have never experienced. Only humans, so far as we know, can do that. To dream up that which never was, or to our knowledge has never been, and imagine. And then the gift of memory. So Jesus is telling us to re-experience, and John is making real in the first John, his letter, that we are to re-experience Jesus of Nazareth by means of this gift of meals. So that it is really a combination of all these gifts, but specifically the gift that is given to us by the hearing of the word. Now, by that I don't mean the Bible, as understood traditionally by evangelicals. I mean the experience of the church over thousands of years of God's presence reenacted in our time. That creates in us a living memory, a living experience of God. And so that we are really at the same table with Jesus as the 12. When we are around the Eucharist table, it is not a different table. We are experiencing anew, afresh, this old memory that precedes us and comes from others, given to us, and then mixed with our own tactile experiences on the outside and the inward witnesses, the community sense, community experience, the ability to project from our current experience, estimate into the future how it will transform us, even imagination, the ability to see possibilities we've never dreamed of that God might do in us. But through the gift of memory, ours and theirs, we know Jesus. And so that's what makes the Word of God a living reality. At least that's the human side of it. I am not impressed with all the arguments about the Bible, left or right, because they really are all flat-lined. They miss the point. Those on the right, those who hold that it is, quote, the Word of God, quote, directly to us, some kind of letter God intended for us, miss the whole point. They understand in the Holy Bible, they understand that God is primarily the primary author, who is writing in some kind of dictation, although it goes through the experience of the person receiving, both men and women, mostly men, but women as well. Goes through their experience and then is communicated, handed down to us. And because it is God who is the author, nothing can be wrong with it, at least in its original manuscripts, da-da, and it's all flat-lined. What it literally does is it makes everything from Genesis to Revelation of equal value, because if it's all from God, then it all has to be true. Every story has to be exactly as it's written historically, scientifically, and it becomes really almost irrational to hold that. But the worst part of it isn't that. The worst part of it is that we see the Word of God as something in the Bible as words. We see it as a system of theologies, a system of very static truths that is given to us over time through 66 books, but one author, God himself. Now, on the other side of that coin, sometimes we have these, and this is the side I live on generally, that we have the human emphasized, and I think that makes sense given the incarnation. But for those to the extreme of that, they almost dismiss God as an author. They see in it only coming out of the traditions of a certain time and space and place, and only valuable just as any other piece of literature is valuable. Maybe, perhaps, because within the tradition of those who are Christian, it claims a certain authority because it's our story. But not much beyond that. And I think that too misses the point. I think that is flat-lined. Because what we claim is that God is active in the original event as they're being described. God is active with the people who experience them. And God is active with the church, the community of God, Old Testament, the Jewish community, New Testament, the church, as it remembers the event, which is not the same thing. And as they now reinterpret it in yet a new circumstance, like the exile, which is when much of it was gathered and finally put in the form that we have the Old Testament, anyway. And so the point is that the Scriptures was never to be an isolated book. It always was a part of the marvel, the wonder of a worshiping community. Much of it is just that, coming out of the liturgies of the church, such as the opening poem of Genesis 1, although given the icons, it almost has to be from the Babylonian exile time. The second story is older, clearly, probably is part of the Mosaic imprint. But all of that, the point is that it is alive precisely because it's interactive at every level. It's interactive from what it's remembering in the past. It's interactive from the community that gathered it, put it into its current text. And this same Spirit of God is interactive in us, now forming us with this living Word in a new context, a new situation. All of it made meaningful because of the Messiah. Because it is a word about the Messiah, the living Word.
We've waited for you for so long, we believe.
You have much bigger things ahead of you, Simon, son of Jonah.
Anything is possible now. Don't you see?
Would you at least know him if you saw him again?
I will know him for the rest of my life.
That's not flatline. That's quite alive. And so what I enjoyed about The Shepherd, The Chosen, is I suddenly saw creative artists who, by the way, from a creative perspective, it's clearly a low budget. Well, I don't know if that's clear, but it's done very, very well aesthetically as well. It's the use of imagery was powerful. I was excited and taken by it and can't wait to watch the second one. I noticed last night there's a third one out already. The point is, whoever the author is of that series gets the word it was intended as a living memory alive at the beginning, alive in those who gathered it, and now alive by the Spirit in us. It's interdynamic. It's human and divine. It's divine and human, and you cannot untangle it. If you do, you flatline it. You make it meaningless, or at least less meaningful. So, the next time you gather for worship and are before the Eucharist, or you are walking down the street and you see Eucharistic moments, remember well the story given, and let it be reenacted in your imagination, in the estimates you make about what is an appropriate response, and as you gather the communal experience of wisdom. Become the living sign of Jesus to the people around you. Be poured out, as it were, as Jesus of Nazareth was poured out. Let it become more than flat.
I'm Dallas, director of The Chosen. You know, last year, over 15,000 people from around the world crowdfunded a record-breaking $10 million to create an original series outside the Hollywood system. And we created this so the world can experience Jesus in a way that's never been done before. And what you just saw is a glimpse of season 1. Go to thechosen.tv and you'll get a free 48-hour pass to watch episode 1 in advance. This project has been an incredible ride, and we'd love for you to join us.